it's you.
Don't you want to be a legend?
That's what I fucking said, man! We're fucking here!
Guys, we fucking made it.
So much. Little boys, welcome to the City of Angels.
Don't you want to be a legend?
2 weeks left on his mandate. He broke out of rehab, Ian Ford. I feel like this guy has a death wish.
What happened, man? How did everything get so fucked?
You wouldn't have any of this if it wasn't for me.
I'm so fucking sorry.
Why are you here?
Promise me that we're gonna be fine.
I promise.
Before the band blew up, this girl.
What girl?
Sarah. Her name was Sarah.
Welcome to another episode of Thinking with Mike, and today I have the special extra privilege of being able to talk to a movie director, screenplay writer, actress and acting coach, and lots more, who is my special guest today. And she just won last Sunday an award in Muskogee, Oklahoma, the Bare Bones International Independent Film and Music Festival. She won the Robert Rodriguez Independent Auteur Filmmaker Award, and well-deserved, because I just watched her film. I heard Sarah. I got it. Okay. And it is an amazing film. And Kymberly, welcome, and thank you for coming on my show.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, it was easy, and the timing seemed to be good because I didn't know you were up for this award, and then I just found out you won it. So something to talk about. And I just saw your film, and it really was fantastic. It was a feature-length film. What was about 90 minutes long?
It's actually 78 minutes long.
78 minutes. Well, it was. It didn't seem like a short by any length. It seemed like a real film, and I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, and it was great, and it was touching, and it seemed to almost mirror the life of like a Kurt Cobain kind of character, and you read that in the film, but you get really intimate. It's not superficial at all. You really get intimate into a compelling story that is like I was telling you before. It reminded me of the Stations of the Cross. There was some serious heavy stuff going on, and you develop some characters rather quickly, and you can tell. My impression was that I knew you were an acting coach, and you direct like an acting coach. You've been told that before?
What does that mean to you?
What it means to me is that I was seeing the camera stay on an ensemble of characters for a really long time. It didn't seem like you were hiding behind quick chopped edits where you see the back of someone's head and someone talking to someone's face you don't see. And my limited acting experience and what I've seen in theaters is that some of the hardest part about acting is listening and not talking, because then you see who's really got it or not, because you could have some really bad listeners right on stage, and it was just beautiful to watch all these ensemble characters at a dinner table or in an apartment doing drugs and partying and stuff, and you keep the camera on them for a really long time, and it's beautiful, and you just let the audience in like it's an intimate experience. Is it fair to say?
Well, I mean, that's just music to my ears, because intimacy and the truthfulness of the story was top priority for me. For many reasons. But yeah, I prioritizing acting and working through the actors is my focus and probably my greatest skill as a director at this point. That's what I have, my, how many hours of experience to make you an expert. What is that?
10,000 hours, 10,000.
Yeah, I have,
right.
A million hours of working with actors. So that's where I feel the most comfortable, but I'm also the most intrigued, to work through their instruments so they really feel like they're living in the moment. And we do, extensive work on backstory and a lot of improvisation and rehearsal of the moments that aren't scripted, but that inform what is scripted, so that by the time they get to that, there's a real history in their relationships. And so, yeah, by the time they're connected in that way, I want the camera on them. I want to stay with them. I want to honor them living through moments.
Right.
And,
Right.
yeah, I had a DP, Matthew Holla, who it was like music between us. I mean, he's the only DP I've worked with so far in all 3 films. And
Right.
he really intuitively will follow sort of as I'm seeing something through the camera, somehow he brings the camera there. So it's a very actor friendly process. As you said, I'm very honoring of the actors and their process, and interested in their responses.
Yeah, no, and Hollow's work really comes out. DP's director of photography for all us millions of people who don't know what that is. I noticed right away from the opening shot of your film, the lens he was using, or the way he was using his lens, was barely keeping the actor kind of like in a focus, and which kind of created a kind of dizziness to his situation. And he was kind of someone who had just escaped, famously, because he was like a Kurt Cobain kind of big character. TMZ's reporting on him. He just escaped from a mandatory sentence in a rehab facility, and he left. He escaped, and he's by the beach, and you don't know why he's by the beach. And he takes his shoes off, and you're like, is he going to kill himself? You can't leave that open. And the camera just kind of got this lazy, weird focus, which I love. The first thing I noticed. So yeah, your DP's great, and he continues that throughout the film, where it's filmed almost like in a garage band kind of way. And the ambient sounds, if you're a sound man, whoever that was, I don't know if I got your sound person's. I think your sound person was the minor credits, but I thought the sound design was really good in this movie. And also your lead character was also the one who wrote the story, Dan, right?
Yeah.
And you co-wrote the screenplay with him, and he also co-wrote the music, and he's a star. So he had quite a hand in the movie too, didn't he?
Yes, he did. You know, and just to say that the experiment of this particular movie, which you're being so articulate and gracious about, and I just love hearing your thoughts after watching it, was really my experiment was I wanted to see if we could feel like we were inside the lead character, Ian Ford's head. And so, you know, those choices that Matt and I made around going from blurry to clear as you're watching it, you know, that you said it feels like it's foggy and out of focus, and then it gets more in focus. That's because I want you to feel like you're in his head and seeing through his eyes. And a lot of that is because the story came through him. It's really through his eyes that I was interested in honoring such a personal story. You know, I think some of it's imagined and some of it's based on things he's lived. Dan Adeniev, you know, who plays Ian Ford, as you said, and the story came from him. But, you know, I really wanted to honor, you know, his trust in sharing a personal story with me and developing it with me by us really seeing it through his eyes. I was trying to see through his eyes, and I wanted the audience to feel what Ian Ford was feeling. That was the experiment I was doing.
But you also let us see through Cameron's eyes, Jones' eyes, the actor Cameron Jones, Josh, his best friend. And what I noticed was when Cameron, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, when Cameron starts having flashbacks as he learns that Ian has dropped on his front door while he was at work as a music teacher, and his wife calls him up, Chris calls him up and says, "You better get home." He starts having flashbacks. Now his flashbacks at the first LA apartment that they're living in, the producer's apartment, is crystal clear, beautiful view of downtown LA, right? It's very deep view, very gorgeous colors, and like your geography is a big part of your film. So you have this beautiful apartment. There was an artist living there, maybe the girlfriend, the producer, I don't know, but it's an artist's apartment. So beautiful colors, paints on the floor. And he's remembering this, but when we get to Ian's memory of the apartment he buys for his girlfriend, Sarah, it's foggy outside. There's no view. Am I right? Am I remembering this correctly?
Yeah.
And I freaking love that. It was very Twilight Zone. Like, wait, is this a real memory? Is this a false memory? Is this a drug-induced haze? What the hell's going on? Because this is so different. So you create mood so well. And it jumped out at me.
Thank you so much. And it's so much fun because, you know, you're clearly a film, you know, buff. I can tell by the, you know, what
Our whole family is. We love movies. We're geek,
yeah,
movie
I mean,
geeks.
you're noticing every single choice that we make has something to do with the character psychologically.
Yeah.
You know, in this film, that's how I was working. So the fact that you're noticing those things is wonderful. But I just want the audience to feel it for sure. You know?
No, I didn't think it wasn't self-conscious. It
Yeah.
wasn't, I don't think it was self-conscious. Just, it was my job to think about your film. So this is my take on it, but it was an emotional ride. And which I think you're right, it's the most important part. And believing the characters, caring about the characters, right? And then going on the ride with them. And like I said to you, I didn't think the movie was really about Sarah. I thought she was like the thing that gets you to the thing. She was, but I had probably the least amount of empathy for Sarah because, like I told you, I've had addiction in my own family. Yeah. And there's something about someone who turns other people onto drugs, is a drug addict, that if you've lived it, you've become calloused yourself to that person because you know how much damage that person has inflicted on your loved ones. So for me, maybe I was not the best audience for you because I felt a little jaded to care about Sarah. I knew she was just screwing up this band and this relationship. So not to give too much away, but I cared more about, I think, Ian and Josh and how they're going to resolve this really tense situation where they just, you know, so I was caring about them the most.
I love hearing that. And it's, you know, it's different based on someone's subjective experience. And in this film, your subjective experience around addiction and recovery, it's absolutely, the theme is rehabilitation for sure. You know, it's, and it's the relationship between addiction and fame and addiction and artistry and, you know, your own personal trauma, what you've been through.
And Ian was trying to fix Sarah, right? He cared about Sarah, but he had to go away on tour. He couldn't be with her, but he knew that every time she was alone in that apartment, she was going to go downhill more. So it was a horrible situation for him to be in, let alone for his own addiction. But he knew that she was going to die or going to go down a really bad place. And he couldn't really stop it.
You are Team Ian. You are Team Ian.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, and I told you, this actor, Dan Adoniev, has got like an old school face. He's got that Errol Flynn kind of look to him anyways. You can put him in a Three Musketeers outfit and he'd fit right in. I mean, he has a beautiful nose. He's a great presence on film. So I liked that he did all the close-ups with his face because he was just swimming with emotion. He's great. And I threw out the fact that I thought your son, without trying, is a natural scene stealer because he is just, and his name is, that's right, Ethan Harris Riggs is your son. And he plays the drummer. And I don't know if you gave him any real lines. It seemed like it was mostly improvisational presence in the film. But his dancing and his smiling and his reacting to other people, your eyes just kept going to him. So, I mean, I don't need make his head too big, but I think you kept thinking when you watch film, that kid's got a career ahead of him. He's fun to watch.
You know, I really use him because he's a great young actor. And it's, you know, and people ask me, do you know any actors? And I'll recommend him and I'll say, oh yeah. And I'll send Ethan Harris Riggs. And I won't say I'm his mom. He's trained, he's professional. He always, you know, brings amazing choices to set. And it's this interesting thing where, yes, I'm his mom, but I'm also using him because he's a really fine young actor, and having to be a little objective about that as a director is kind of strange, but I have to. And
And the thing is, if just to harp on this a little bit more, because I thought, well, maybe that's just a guy playing himself. He's not really acting, right? He's just being the surfer dude drummer. Like he could have done that, right? But then I saw him in another treatment you did of a series you're trying to make about remind me the name of the film, about the psychology, the psych ward.
It's a short film called Faith.
Faith, yeah, thank you. Yeah. And in Faith, I forgot that was him, and I went back and go, oh my God, that's the same kid. And he plays a completely different character with a different kind of hair, different kind of look, a completely different person altogether.
My mother came upstairs, saw the blood, and smacked me. across the face. Now we're talking. Talk dirty to me, baby. Mwah.
You're an Orthodox Jew. It's not uncommon for a mother to do that. I'm Irish Catholic.
After that, I hardly ever get my period. In fact, when I was pregnant, I didn't even know it. I just thought I was getting fat for 6 months.
Ooh, still might be the case.
I'd love to be pregnant.
And he plays it with such deadpan humor that I was like, okay, yeah, he's the real deal.
Well, thank you. On behalf of him, I'll take that compliment for him. But he's, I agree. Yeah, what he did in Faith was just, I can't think of anyone else playing that character now. It was really interesting. All of those actors, just, I love that project.
Hey!
Every time. Stop that.
Never, it's too easy.
You look upset. Are you gonna tell me what's wrong?
Go. Apparently, I have 13 days left in my apartment.
Can they do that?
Yeah. Yeah, also apparently there's a, law against not paying rent.
In your family? I consider you a friend. So if you asked to stay with me or for anything, you know I wouldn't even blink.
I'd just take you up on that.
So you work with this, do you always work with a similar ensemble? I know you have some of your same editors and other people and producers, but do you try to keep the same ensemble or do you like to mix it up?
It really depends on you mean in terms of the crew or the cast?
Both.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, I'm such a new filmmaker, really. I mean, this is, I'm attached to 3 films coming up. And I don't know if I'll use the same people. I want to keep meeting people. I'm also really interested in working with women, and a lot of the crew I met for those first 3 films happened to be men. And I would just like to mix it up in that way and just, meet more people. I would work with Matt any day of the week, that GP and
He's good.
Yeah, and Jordan Halpern Schwartz, who composed I Heard Sarah, and he gave us some music for Faith. We'll definitely work again too. He's a wonderful composer, and as you said, music was really a character in I Heard Sarah, and he channeled Ian Ford, and all of the music came through Ian Ford's voice. So any music here is of Ian Ford, the lead character, and this particular composer was able to do that. He was able to sing and compose music as if he were Ian Ford. So that was really cool. So I'll definitely work with them again. As far as acting, I always do a huge casting because you want to find exactly the right person.
Do you use Carrie Rock was your person, your rock on casting? She kind of helps you out there?
I love Carrie. She's amazing. She, she's how with every film. Faith, I cast pretty much myself, but, with the producers on that, but, she cast, Rose's Turn, and she cast, I Heard Sarah. And I would definitely work with her again too. Yeah. And there are some actors that I just can't wait to work with again. I mean, everyone in Faith, I can't wait to work with again.
Yeah, that was a great little film. Are these films available yet? Or are they all embargoed still?
Faith and Rose's Turn you can get on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, and I Heard Sarah is still in the festival tour, so I'm not sure where it's going to end up. Yeah.
Okay, great. Speaking of actresses, you put an actress in this last film, I Heard Sarah, that usually when you criticize something like, I wish they hadn't done that, or I wish you had given us more of Diva Zappa. Holy crap. She burns up the screen too.
She's amazing. She's got such a wonderful energy. I really loved working with her, and she was so brilliant in that role.
She plays Bolt, the manager of Ian's character, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was, it was a really I would have loved to have used her more. I would have loved to have used Skate more. It was tricky to create this POV piece,
Right.
and to just risk and just commit to saying, okay, I'm going to experiment in this way. I'm going to let this come through this lead character's vision and try to be in his head and see what happens and try the things I wanted to try. But yeah, Diva's amazing.
She's Frank Zappa's daughter, right?
Yeah, and it was really funny because she came in and, you know, with Carrie, we saw so many actors for every character. It was really hard to cast Sarah, for example. Chloe Hurst was so brilliant, but we saw so many people before she came in. But Diva came in and, you know, I did the little nonverbal signal to Dan and Carrie, like, oh, that's it. I like her. And then we asked her to do some more stuff. And then she said, by the way, I am that Zappa, you know, because I think it's like,
oh, really? You didn't look at me.
Yeah. So it must be like an elephant in the room with that last name, you know?
Yeah.
And well, that's even better because she's got this sort of music in her bones, this history that will come through and be in the film. But yeah, she just came in as an actor. We didn't know who she was.
Right. My wife said, you mean Moon Unit's sister? I'm like, yeah, Moon Unit's sister.
So, Chris, aside from your amazing domestic skills, what are you into?
I'm a respiratory therapist.
Oh, awesome. I learned CPR when I was a junior lifeguard.
Good for you.
What? Can you not fathom someone being interested in my boring career?
I'm very interested in your career.
What exactly does a respiratory therapist do?
I think it's like Kundalini yoga or something. I don't know.
I love yoga.
That's great.
Yeah. Diva. Yeah. Speaking of casting, again, Chloe Hurst plays Sarah. And like I said, I wasn't sympathetic to her character, not because of her acting, but just because of what she represented in the story, right?
Yeah.
But she is gorgeous. I mean, she really is a looker, isn't she? Diva's character, Bolt, has green hair, right? She's the manager of the rock star. And then Angie Kim's character, Chris, is kind of like the type A power housekeeper, professional Asian wife, who is making it a magnificent dinner for people, but at the same time she's furious, but she's keeping her cool. You've got Vivaldi music for her rocking. She's rocking Vivaldi in the house, right? And then you have Sarah, and she's a ginger. She's another color person, and she is really beautiful but dangerous, right? She's got this killer smile, but she's saying things that people are like, whatever, man. Like, she's deep and dangerous. And she's like this kind of spike in the middle of the movie. You don't have to do it, but she's all the drama circling around her. And the actors are saying, all of my life was circling around her. And she's saying, you wouldn't have been a great band if it wasn't for me. So just an implied concrete block in the middle of your movie is this woman, Sarah. And I wanted to save her for last because I felt myself not liking her for who her character was, but she was an impressive presence in the movie.
Where is my fucking shit? Where have you put it? Where have you fucking put it?
God damn it, Sarah,
Get the
stop!
fuck away from me!
want? God damn it, Sarah. Stop. Stop this. Stop this insanity.
You want insanity? I can give you insanity. You'd have to be here to take it, but I can give you insanity.
Stop this.
Why do you want me to stop? Waiting for you, fucking waiting for you! I've been waiting for you every fucking day!
You know what? You're so tired of sitting there? Then leave. Get out. There's the door. Huh? There are no bars, no chains, no fucking locks that you don't have the fucking keys to, huh?
Great. Yeah, no, I mean, it's so brilliant for me to hear how it's triggering for you, how that character is triggering for you. And some people feel that way very much, and they sort of hold her responsible because technically she turned Ian onto drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's this interesting insight into addiction, right? Because addicts are, someone turned them onto drugs, and it's very much, it's a way to fill a void when, it's a symptom of a problem. And, I think Sarah, that beautiful apartment that you were referring to that Josh remembers so clearly, that was actually one of Elton John's properties that somehow we were able to use on Sunset. It was just so perfect for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That was her place. That was Sarah's place. So she's
I didn't know that. I didn't know that was Sarah's place. Oh.
Yeah. So she's this moneyed, sort of, she has money, but she's lonely, and she's kind of a groupie. I mean, she's one of these sort of 60s, even though it's the current time, she likes that 70s rock and roll scene, that late 60s 70s rock and roll scene, and she's helping them, but she doesn't really have a life of her own. She's an artist, but she's not really focusing on her own art. So she has a backstory too, and everyone has a backstory. There's everybody, no matter what they do. And there's that scene, where he leaves her, in her darkest moment.
Or she's clenching her hands, right? She's clenching her hands because she's deep into addiction at that point in time.
Yeah. And he walks out. So I think, I'm interested in stories where everyone is flawed and, where is the light and where is the dark, and really what happens from the beginning to the end through the characters. Yeah.
And you make her look like an angel in the beginning. She looks like this angel, and she's basically saying, I am Los Angeles, welcome to LA, right? and then here, snort this, right? So grow up. And then Chris asks her husband, what were you doing? And he says, well, imagine we were a normal rock and roll band. That's what we were doing, right? So use your imagination. We did it all, right?
Yeah.
And her character, Chris, I found myself getting more and more irritated with, because she wanted to be the really compassionate, scolding her husband for not welcoming his long lost best friend, right? But at the same time, she's totally annoyed by the whole situation. And then when she finds out that he didn't reveal to her his entire past, she's infuriated. Don't touch me. She slaps him. She gets violent. And you're like, oh, I know that wife too. Like I'm becoming prejudiced as an audience score because, oh, I really liked her. She's being really annoying to poor Josh, but Josh had it coming. And then you realize that Josh is living kind of a lie, right? And I told you that. I said, I think Josh was living lies, being the music teacher, everything's hunky-dory, but it's not. And Ian's living with the truth, a horrible truth he has to reveal to Josh, or he's going to die, right? And you have this kismet that's kind of coming together, these two forces of nature, and it ends up with a bloody mess in the bedroom, right? So it's interesting as hell. The story, the way you weave this was great.
Oh, thank you so much. Weaving it was, it was very time consuming, and you know, I love that insight about living a lie versus living the truth, and what it costs to live the truth, and what it costs to be in your truth. And that's, you know, something that's for an artist, that an artist understands, that you're not going to be able to make your music. You're not going to be able to make your film. You're not going to be able to, you know, act well unless you're in touch with and contact with that truth. And that can be really painful. So how do artists deal with that is always a question that seems to be recurring in my work. I'm often doing work around the artistic process as well. And
Right.
that really intrigues me. And, you know, as far as the characters go, I didn't create the characters, you know, in this one. This is the first film that I didn't write. I mean, I co-wrote the script so that we could film it, but
It was Daniel's story.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
his characters, you
Yeah.
know, so just trying to be as true to the characters as I can.
Right. Speaking of stories, I think that everyone, a lot of the great directors, I wrote it down. I'm not that big a film nerd. I wish I was, but you know, there was the Thelma Schumacher, right? And, you know, and for Scorsese,
Yeah.
and Menke and Tarantino.
Yeah.
And so you had these directors who said, you know, what kind of filmmaker would have Scorsese been without Thelma Schumacher? Well, watch the movie about Jimmy Hoffa,
Mhm.
because that's a movie when Scorsese is not editing as much. And I thought it was unwatchable. I mean, I don't want to be dig on anybody. I love Scorsese, but I did not like that last film he did. It was just, I was like, where the heck was the editor in this movie? Right.
Yeah.
When you watch Raging Bull, it's more of like a Kymberly Harris kind of movie, right? Where it's just tightly edited and every scene has emotional impact. And it's just, you can't let go of this tragedy, right?
What happened? He got out of line, I slapped him around, Tommy straightened it all out, and it's all over.
You give me that look, Joey. I gotta accept your answer, you know. But I'm telling you now, if I hear anything, I swear on our mother, I'm gonna kill somebody. I'm gonna kill somebody, Joey.
Well, go ahead and kill everybody. You're a tough guy, go kill people. Kill Vicky, kill Salvi, kill Tommy Como, kill me while you're at it. What do I care? You're killing yourself the way you eat. You fat fuck, look at you.
For you, I mean, how frustrating is it, and how much do you need an editor to keep you reined in?
Well, it's a great question, and it's something that I'm discovering. I feel like I really have a great idea now of what I need from an editor, and I had to go through the 3 films to figure that out. My first editor of Rose's Turn was the kind of kismet I felt with Matthew Halla when I, as a DP. It was a dance. It was intuitive. It was, you know, a beautiful language between us. It worked brilliantly. And
Was this Moisha? Was it Moisha?
No, this is, his name's Jared.
Okay.
And he asked me, what I noticed that his technique was the first thing he did was ask me about 100 questions. He just wanted to get in my head about this film. And boy, could I tell that technique worked for editors. Walter Moyes, he edited Faith with me and had such a child's heart and was just so emotionally involved, and like the biggest fan of everything. He just brings so much love and light to his process. And then I heard Sarah, I had several editors. I just, you know, I kept every incarnation. We were sort of, and I was traveling, I was directing something in New York. So every incarnation, it was a little bit, and by the end, you know, we used a little bit of Walters and a little bit of Moons. And then I came in and did some myself and got it to where it is. But that one was harder to edit, but mostly because of timing and traveling and stuff like that. But it's very important. I would love to find a Thelma. I would love to find one editor. I think that'd be amazing.
Yeah, what I was learning about doing my research and editing was one of the great editors was Verna Fields, right? And she was like a monster in Hollywood. She became an executive in Hollywood. but her great editing, for instance, the scenes in Jaws, the people said that movie was basically made by her because what she did with that editing, and she invented this is the wipe away edit, is that what they call it? Wipe away, where basically there's an action happening with like a telephoto lens from a distance, and then a person walks in front of the camera, and you could switch over to a different point of view without changing the narrative of the scene. Was her invention. So it seems like there's a lot of women that were like really, really great editors behind some male directors. I don't know if that's a thing in Hollywood or not, but just from a cursory look at the history of great editors, a lot of them are women, and they were behind a lot of the greatest directors. So that's why I asked you about editing and how it's affecting you.
It's you when you think about, if you know a woman's name as a director or an editor, if you know her name, think of how brilliant she must be, because you're talking about, you know,
a sea of men, right?
Well, you're talking about anywhere between 4% or not to 9%, depending on the year, of working directors are women.
Right.
I mean, think of the odds of that. That's just insane. So if if you're mentioning a editor by name or a director by name, think of how brilliant Ava DuVernay must be. Right. Think of how brilliant Patty Jenkins, Catherine Bigelow, think right. If you know their name, if they're household names, and they're either 4% or 9%. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people have brilliant women, behind them. But I really feel everything is on the director. That's my vision. For better or worse, the director is responsible for anything. When I watch a play, when I watch a movie, if there's something that I am critical of, it's on the director.
Yep.
It really is. I mean, that's just the job description. It's a symbiotic system. Everyone has to play their roles, and the director has to be responsible for the creative vision and communicating the creative vision. And that goes for the editing too. I mean, so when you say an editor comes in and makes the movie, that's a director. So that editor was taking an editor credit, but really they're directing the movie, because it's really the edit is also the director's responsibility. Absolutely.
That's interesting. Now, the word auteur comes up with you a lot. I know it's a festival that was the category of the prize, but do you see yourself as an auteur filmmaker?
I guess the directors like Gus Van Sant and, a lot of the directors that I watch their films time and time again, Cassavetes. I mean, these are Lisa Cholodenko. These are auteur filmmakers. They're storytellers. They have a very specific story, a creative vision that Agnes Varda. I mean, I can go on and on because I watch different directors for different things, but it really does come back to kind of an auteur that I respect the most, more than a formulaic storyteller. It's someone who is going into something very personal and trying to communicate it. So I love the word, and I think that is my taste for sure.
Do you think Hollywood is allergic to auteur filmmakers, that they want to have more of a company person come in and just do, like you said, kind of rote narrative and fit into a script that the producers are going to understand without seeing the movie? Like you just
I think there's a very profitable place for what you just said. I mean, the good news about a movie like that is that it's built-in money. There's built-in foreign sales. So there's going to be readily an investment in that kind of huge movie with commercial appeal. But I feel commercial appeal is touching someone's heart. I feel commercial appeal is when you really move someone. So I don't really believe or ascribe to that divide. And maybe that's just incredibly idealistic, but you look at, for example, Nomadland, which just won. Yes, there was one huge A-list star in it, but this is a story, this couldn't be a more human story. This is about and it couldn't have been more raw performances. It couldn't have been more personal. I don't think it was a huge budget. So there's no special effects. There's nothing formulaic. It's absolutely an auteur's vision, and it just won Best Picture. So, you know, it must have touched some audiences, right?
I think of a director that sometimes makes movies that are like hit all the right spots for a moneymaker, like a Ron Howard. And I love his work, but he just made Hillbilly Elegy, which I absolutely loved. And it didn't seem like a typical Ron Howard film. It reminded more of You, where it had some really awkward, freaky moments with it. And it dealt with addiction and that spiral in a family and the embarrassment that comes with it. It was criticized a lot, but my family, we watched it twice, which we don't often do. So what do you say about a film like that, that has that verisimilitude, where you're basically having scenes like the scene in the street where she's having a breakdown and all the neighbors are coming out and watching? It reminded me of like a Bonnie and Clyde, some kind of movie where you felt like you're watching a reality. And we live in Galesburg, Illinois. So my kids are like, this looks like Galesburg. It was Ohio, but it had that kind of middle America feel. So what's your impression? Did you see the movie Hillbilly Elegy?
I did. Yeah, I mean, what I love about what you're saying is that you have this personal experience that's very poignant, you know, and with addiction. And so his responsibility in telling that story, and that's also a true story, but his responsibility is verisimilitude, like you said. I mean, his responsibility is to honor, you know, families that have been through this and not to speculate. So, you know, in your mind, based on, you know, something that is very interesting to you, you actually believed, you know, those stories and those characters. And that's the most important thing. And I think that's subjective, you know, to a certain extent. But yeah, so it was a very interesting story for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for the audience who doesn't know, verisimilitude, how would you describe verisimilitude in movies? I think of like some of the early Italian filmmakers, like, is it an intense attention to detail and realism? Is that how would you describe verisimilitude?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a specific word, but it's really such a general word. I mean, if you look at, you know, for me, my aesthetic, for example, in I Heard Sarah, and in all the films except for Rose's Turn, I would shoot the script and then I'd say, okay, now actors put this in your own words, you know, and shoot that, so that they had this freedom and they could really say what they needed to say in that moment. And then I said, now I want you to shoot it with no words. So you're going to communicate what you need to say to each other, but non-verbally. And we would shoot that, which is also part of why the edit was tricky, because you know, I really wanted to try that. But, you know, the truth, the verisimilitude, the truth for that movie for me came through, this is a real moment. I'm going to create the environment so that you really are living in this moment. I'm going to give you enough rehearsal, enough backstory, you know, and personalize it to the extent where you're really living in that moment. And, you know, and then turn the camera on it. So it's creative, you know, but it's not a documentary, but in that moment, they really have enough to concentrate on, that they believe, okay, I am in this world, and this is what I need to do here, and this is what I want to express here as myself. The actors feel that as themselves at that moment. That's the kind of verisimilitude that's really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Picking up against those limits and really making it personal. So it's you in these imaginary circumstances, but it's you.
Yeah. You shot a very long take, or you're allowed to be in the film, a very long take of them performing in a venue. And I was impressed by how long you let that take go, right? It was a long time, but it didn't seem wrong, but it was like, I feel like I'm at this concert and these guys are really jamming. Is your son really a drummer? Because you kept going to him. It looked like he was on the beat, but you let these guys jam for a really long time. And I was like, wow, that's an interesting decision she made in this film, to give you a real sense that they're a band. Why did you do that?
It's a great question, because I went back and forth. So basically I used that music video as a passage of time in this, you know, and I was watching a lot of French New Wave when I was prepping for this. And I wanted to make a decision that both really got them, you know, you had to see them at their height together.
Right.
And so I conflated this music video with the passage of time between, 6 years ago when they were first starting out to now. And I wanted you to be with them on that journey through their music. And I wanted you to see that he was really a good rock star, that they had something. And to answer your question, yes, Ethan took drum lessons for the movie.
He had a great style. He did the high hand style. Yeah. And you did a lot to create a kind of reality, LA reality. You had the girls, of course, following him, wanting his autograph right in the beginning. And you kind of created a kind of, you aged them well too, because they look really young in the scenes, in the back scenes. They look very, Christopher, especially like Josh, his character looked amazingly younger. You put the eyeliner on him. He just looked like a different guy.
Yeah, he really did. I just want to credit, while we're talking about that, Joanna David, the costume designer. She and I worked really hard on that. And but the looks were amazing that she created with them. So they really looked younger to older, but also the acting. I mean, Cameron freaks me out at his transition. It's almost like he's a different person.
Yeah.
He really did beautifully with that. I mean, I demanded it. I needed that for the performance, but what he did with it was just, I thought, sensational. I mean, you could feel the freedom of the youth.
And the movie, exactly. And the movie could have easily gone to, like, it's just a theory that they had a big band, right? And the movie could have been less because you didn't really establish the reality of their band, but you established it. So it wasn't a theory, right? You believe it.
Yeah. They played together, all the time on, that was what they were doing. Back to this idea of the truth in film or verisimilitude, it's, if I were to just turn the camera on them as a band, if they hadn't already really truthfully in real time created music together, hung out together, partied together, been together, done all the things the characters had done together, you wouldn't have felt that camaraderie between them. I mean, that's what I do. I make sure they live the actual moments that they're talking about in the script. And that's why we were fascinated. I mean, I would say, okay, now it's this time, and this is what you're doing, and this is where you're coming from, and you're just coming home and you're going to party. And we would just turn the cameras on, and they were so in character that it was fascinating.
Yeah, it's very old fashioned in a sense, because you said the idea is men who love each other will wrestle and punch each other. And right off the bat, you have them wrestling in front of Sarah and the drummer. And they're seriously wrestling on the floor. They're freaking wrestling, right? And then in the bedroom, in their master bedroom, they're beating the living crap out of each other. And you actually worry about Ian's life, because you don't know if Josh is in control. Like, he could have savagely killed him, right? But it reminded me of the old school films where men would have a fist fight and then embrace each other, and the movie would resolve. So you weren't afraid to go there and basically have them punch each other, break drywall, and really get in on a fight in a master bedroom while the women watch. It reminded me of something old school, but really true.
Well, that was his story, so I did my best to tell it in the most personal way I could. And there was something about, they had to get it out physically. There was no other way for them to get to the other side.
Right.
They couldn't do it through talking. They couldn't do it through remembering. There was so much in them that they just had to get it out in that primal way. And that felt truthful to me.
Absolutely.
I don't want people doing that, and there's that moment where Chris comes up and tries to split it up, and he pushes her. And I really had a hard time with that as a woman. I thought, but you have to be truthful to the moment. And in that moment, he needed to knock that out with Ian. And he, also was protecting his wife, like, get away from us, but it was, that to me felt very, very violent, but.
Yeah, she definitely ruled the house. I mean, she was definitely not overbearing, I won't say that, but she definitely had a sense of propriety. Her husband, she reminded him that he's a music teacher. She kind of rewarded him when he came in, my husband, the music teacher. Like, she was always trying to build him up in the way she wanted him built up, right? And he had a rock and roll past, which might have been sexy to her, that he was a rock and roller in the past, but she had that under control too. because there wasn't a Sarah involved, right? But when there's a Sarah involved, she gets unhinged in a sense, and she slaps his face. And so I love that you flipped the tables on these characters. I thought that was great.
Well, there's this thing about authenticity, right? In
Right.
that, you know, he was lying to her. He was pretending that his rock and roll fantasies were behind him and that he was very happy being in this suburban traditional
Right.
configuration. And he was repressing, you know, he has that band, the best kept secret van right out in front of his
Still
house.
got the van. I know. Yeah, right.
You know, he's repressing what he really wants. He's repressing that he really was deeply in love with Sarah and his dream. And, you know, and it has to come out. It has to come out at some point. You know, we have to get in touch with our truth, or else, you know, it festers in some way. And, you know, that's the other reason why it had to be a fight, a physical fight at the end. It had to exercise itself out.
I think so. I think it really rings true. I'm going to change the conversation a little bit because I hope we've sold this movie to people, because it really is worth watching. I absolutely loved it, but you're welcome. Thanks for turning me on to it. I want to talk a little bit more about you and related to other people who want to go into showbiz, for instance. But you and I have a past. We're both Midwestern kids. You grew up in Bloomington, Illinois, right where my son wants to go to school, actually, but it's right down the road from Galesburg. And you attended Knox College, where we both studied with each other. And we both actually ran into each other on stage, didn't we?
Yes, we did. I just want to ask you quickly, where does your son want to go to school? ISU or Wesleyan?
Oh, no, he wants to go. I have two sons. One's the cellist composer and one's going to be a fireman. So I think he wants to finish his fireman's degree. And I think he might want to go to a school in Bloomington to finish.
Oh, great. Okay.
Which is Heartland, I think.
Oh, Heartland. Yeah, sure. Great. Yeah. Yeah. I grew up in Bloomington Normal. My parents are English professors at Illinois State University. My dad was then the chair. My mom taught poetry and women in literature, and my dad taught English lit and with a focus on American literature. And I was very lucky because they were very, they were very interested in a very cultural concentration. They insisted that I go to Knox. You know, I was like, I'll just go to the state school. You're in Knox, you know, and that's where we met, you and I. And Knox was great. I could not recommend that school more highly. I can't value the education I got there enough. And I loved the theater and everything I learned there. But for me, I went there, then I went to ISU and got my master's in theater.
Oh, okay.
And that was also growth. In between, I was working professionally in Chicago, which was probably the most influential on my learning. But for me, I needed to learn the method. I needed to go to the Actor Studio MFA program to really understand the craft. You know, I studied writing from the method technique, and I studied acting from the method technique. And then I really started to understand for the way I'm built, you know, how to craft something that is resonant according to my own aesthetic. But what Knox did was, you know, just an education in everything. I mean, history, right. Black history, women in history, theater history. And you and I were in a Shakespeare play together, right?
That's the first thing I did at Knox was try out for my first play, and I landed the role of Nick Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream across from you, who were a fairy, I believe.
A fairy.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that was amazing. And you were great in that. It
was fun.
Yeah.
You know, I got the part. You know how I got the part? Because I never acted before, and I came out of high school being a jock. I was not a thespian. You know, that was me. But I wanted to try new things at Knox, and people said you should try it for a play. It'd be a good experience. I saw that. So I'm on stage, right, and we're doing a reading, and I'm with a bunch of Sigma Nus and Fijis, the other guys in fraternities who are more theater guys, and they're playing it like in an acty way. And this was supposed to be the Rustics, and I knew the play from high school. So I said, well, this is like Mo, Larry, and Curly. These guys are rustics. These guys are rough. So I started getting physical and pushing the other guys, right? And that got me the part. Just that I was able to like get a little physical, landed me the part, because I was able at least to know how to read the mood of the script. Was this is raucous, lowbrow humor. This is not Shakespeare, right? But so that was a great experience.
Verisimilitude.
Huh?
Verisimilitude. There you
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the director, Ivan Davidson, to his credit, I think he wanted to bring a little bit of humor in the play. So he's like, that's the play's opportunity to bring in some laughter is the rustics, right? They carry a lot of the humor.
Your character for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, so I distinctly remember you in that part. And then because we were like in the Bower together, right? You were one of the attending fairies for me. So how could I forget that as being a young man? And then we played in a very big production by a man named Salil Singh, who's a senior project was he wrote his own play, and he was kind of like, he had aspirations of like Cecil B. DeMille, because I remember there was like, it was a cast of thousands and people in togas, and there was time travel. And that was the play that convinced me I didn't want to be an actor, because it was a nightmare. Every time it was my turn to talk, it was like a page of dialogue. And I had nightmares for years after that play. So, but you got pulled more in, and you went to get a master's in it. So your dad was an amateur theater actor, right?
Yeah, I mean, he worked in summer stock in Texas. He's from Texas, and he went to Texas Lutheran College on a football scholarship. But he always acted. He was a really good actor. He was the lead in everything, and did some summer stock. And then when I came back from New York, I said, "Dad, let's get you a headshot." And he started working professionally again in Chicago. He did a few commercials, some films, and he was at this age post retirement where he was, they need great actors of that age.
Yeah. Very good. He was a very good looking guy, without a doubt. I mean, he was a looker. And,
well, he definitely turned me on to. I remember my first audition was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and we were in the basement, and I said, I have this audition and they want me. I looked like Dorothy. So they wanted me to be, audition for this. I said, I don't even know what to do. And he goes, okay. And so he would get down on the floor and he'd get, okay, now there's a tornado. And so he made me feel, that I was really in a tornado, and now grab your dog. And so when I went in, I was so living the part. And I think he really turned me on to understanding that, and I was always chasing that. And then when I got to the actor's studio, that's what it's all about. How can you really be the character? How can you give yourself enough information about every component of your relationship with the script and the story that you really can live truthfully?
Now, is this the method like Stanislavski? Like, are you actually method acting? So you're the joke, of course, is that you can't talk to a person like Daniel Day-Lewis. You can't say, hey, Daniel, how's it going? Right. When he's in character. Is that kind of what it's like?
Yeah. I almost never use the word method unless I'm teaching an international method workshop through Strasberg, or, because it's such a misconception. It's really about living truthfully in imaginary circumstances. And Stanislavski, created a technique of what to concentrate on, because if you're in front of an audience, you're going to be concentrating and self-conscious, aware of the audience. So how can you have a craft and a technique that takes you from that concentration to what you would be concentrating on if you were living that part? And that's what's going to bring the best, most believable results, and actually have a shot at reaching through the screen, or the physics of really moving an audience if it is really living that part. And that's what Stanislavski did. I mean, he created that technique, and then Strasberg and Meisner and Adler, all members of the group theater, they all took what they thought was most important about the technique and developed their own techniques and started teaching from there. And for me, Strasberg is the closest, because they also use the sensory work, which I think is really important for actors.
Right. I think Tarantino tried to have a little fun with that in his latest movie with the child actress saying, I prefer to stay in character, talking to Leonardo DiCaprio's character, who is trying to find a new way of acting.
That's my favorite scene in that movie.
Oh my God. It's like almost breaking down the fourth wall a bit, because he's like, because that movie's so layered, right, about the process. And I also love Leo's scene inside his trailer where he's beating his trailer up and beating himself up. I thought it was it's one of my family's favorite movies. We've watched it like a dozen times, or at least a half dozen times. We can't get enough of it. And I was surprised my sons were so into it, but they're like, this is his best movie. That and Inglourious Bastards I love too. But they just think that movie is so gorgeous and so emotional, and they keep watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's so yeah, I mean, most great actors are method.
Right?
Most great actors are living, they're trying to live the roles. It's just people don't know what the method is. And in terms of someone like Daniel Day-Lewis, who is brilliant but also has the luxury of going and living in character for a year, that's nothing to make fun of. I mean, how great is that you get to, you're playing a whatever, a shoemaker, so you go make shoes for a year. Well, guess what, by the time you enter that world, you're gonna really feel like you're in it, which is what brings the most creative joy and power and imagination and interest. But most people don't have that luxury of just living in character, and some people don't need it. Some people, it's very personal to that's not something you force on an actor, what their process is. You
Right. Well, some are in Hollywood. Is it true that some people are just movie stars and they'll just play themselves in lots of movies because that's what the producers want? Is that I won't, like me, like a Vin Diesel. Maybe he's going to play Vin Diesel in 3 different kind of movies because his character kind of is the same character. Does that happen a lot in movies, or is it always pretty much method acting and finding a voice?
Oh no, I think it's all kinds of different things, and for me, it's just a matter of, do I believe that person in that role?
Right.
Do they understand the role? Can I communicate with them? Are they open? Are they talented and gifted enough to, be able to take direction and make their own choices? Do I believe them in that role? I don't want someone that is the role. That's not interesting to me. Just, okay, this guy's a plumber, so it's not a documentary, right? I believe in the craft of acting. It's really interesting, for example, what Chloe Zhao is doing. So she's in The Rider and in Nomadland, she's taking non-actors and putting them with actors. And that's the way she's achieving that authenticity and truth. And I admire her greatly. And what I want to do is do that through acting. I don't want to use the real people. I believe actors can do that, and I can help them do that. And that's what they want to be doing.
Right.
Is that transformation.
Yeah. And Bigelow's from The Hurt Locker, I think you see a lot of that. It's such powerful concentration on acting. His scene in the supermarket, I can't shake that scene. It's a combat movie, but what do you remember? Him in the supermarket trying to shop. I thought that was just absolutely brilliant filmmaking.
That's a brilliant film. It's a very emotional film, like you're saying, about the addiction to war.
Right.
And it's coming through the characters in a very personal way. And, that's really what's interesting. So when you ask about, sort of a more commercial or formulaic thing, maybe that is what, because she's a woman, she looked at war, she looked at, it doesn't lack action. It doesn't lack anything, but it's, she looked at it and she said, what's really interesting here, and same with Patty Jenkins, directing Wonder Woman. It's, suddenly it got past the superficial level and you really go into the mythology and you go into the emotion and you go into the characters, but it's still this multi-gazillion-dollar movie, right? It's, I think we underestimate audiences and how they really do want to care about the acting and the characters. That's really what moves people on any scale. You can do that.
Yeah, I have to say, the Wonder Woman 1980s, I was hoping for more editing myself.
Yeah, I prefer the first one too.
Yeah.
But I'm still glad the second one got made.
Sure. Yeah. And I thought Zack Snyder's cut was amazing too. I thought it was interesting to see. You don't get to see that very often, where a movie is directed by 2 different people, right? That was kind of a study in contrast between Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder. That was very interesting. Yeah, I saw both of them, but we studied both of them at our house. And we're like,
that's great. No, I did not do that.
So what's the hardest thing you ever had to tell someone who is an aspiring actor? They go to LA and they have you had that experience where you've met people in LA and they wanted to be an actor and they talked to you and you've had to tell them something that was hard?
Yes. You know, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about acting. You know, I think actors should look at it as as if they were going for the Olympics or as if they were going to be a concert pianist. You wouldn't just think you could sit down and play a symphony. You wouldn't think you could just go and play for the NBA. But for some reason with acting, people think they can just walk off the street and do it. And it has involved a craft as any, and maybe it's even harder because you're your own instrument. So, you know, it's really when, for example, parents, you know, are pushing their kids and directing their kids. I've had to have difficult conversations about that because it feels sometimes like it's really the parent's dream more than it is the kid. And you're putting the kid into a position where they have to live truthfully. And is that really them or you? You know, I've had to have difficult discussions there. But if you don't love it, you shouldn't do it. You know, the acting, because you can only choose one person. You know, you're hundreds or thousands of people audition and only one person's going to get the role. So you have to really enjoy the process. You have to enjoy auditioning. You have to enjoy just being able to create as an actor and not just be doing it to be famous or to get a role. You know, if you don't enjoy the process, you're going to burn out pretty quickly, because it also takes a lot of perseverance. I mean, you could be brilliant and then, you know, the person playing your dad doesn't look enough like you, so you're not going to get that particular part, but you still have to have a passion for showing up. So I think that's what really separates people that are going to be successful and not is do they really love it? Do they really need to be expressing through this craft?
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense though. It's like anything else. If you're saying it's like anything else, it's really hard. It's not just about, and you're right. I think a lot of people say, well, I can do that.
Yeah.
They're just faking it, right? They're just fakers. And it's so, I was going to ask you, I think that going to a Knox college, one of the wonderful things about going to liberal arts college is, and not majoring too early, is to experience trying to act, trying to be in a choir and sing a song and have a music teacher tell you your voice isn't really professional, right? Or just like I went and saw dance, and I saw tons of theater at Knox too. I think that kids should almost be, maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, I think kids should really either be forced to or encouraged to experience as much art as they can, see professional dance, ballet, modern, everything, because and try it. Because I think the biggest fan of art is artists, really. Right. It's a natural thing that there isn't just like art consumers and artists, but there's art lovers, people who try their hand at dance and theater and appreciate it more now because they realize how hard it is and they still love it. Right. But I think when people don't try going to movies, never go to a theater, never see live acting, I don't think there's much chance they're probably going to go to theaters as adults.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pillar of, you know, cavemen were drawing on cave walls, you know, women were drawing on cave walls. I mean, it's, you know, it's absolutely part of our human spirit that's taken for granted. And everyone can see now. I mean, can you imagine the last year of this pandemic with no movies or TV for people? No. You know, if you know, you really go, okay, how important is storytelling in my life? You know, it's a way, you know, as Shakespeare says, it's holding a mirror up to nature. It's a way that we see ourselves, that we experience ourselves, that we process our lives. It's you know, it's ever important for children to be exposed to art. It's beautiful when that can happen. It has to happen.
Well, I agree. I totally agree. And I think that it's interesting now. One thing I want to ask you about is, it seems like there's more art now than ever in terms of like the offerings. Is it easier for a person to, and you said how hard it is to act, But if the kids want to be just in Hollywood and be close to the process, besides acting, are there tracks they can take? I think off the top of my head, like, would it help if they knew Adobe Premiere, like a good software, or become an electrician because I know they hire electricians on sets. Is there a place where parents can go to help their kids if they're interested in movie making, find a place they might be able to fit into that?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many programs, even for filmmaking or for acting.
Oh, I was saying the movie business, but yes.
Yeah,
yes,
I mean,
either one.
Well, I mean, I have a very interesting, I was directing theater for a long time, but I have a very interesting way I came into film directing. It was almost like an accident, because I wrote a short film and then someone said, will you direct it? And I basically said no. And then I think I was talking to my mom, and she said, you say yes. Why can't you direct it? And I was like, okay. And then when I did that, I realized that everything, I was a director this whole time, you know, that the acting and the writing and the coaching, these were all part. Once I started directing, I got on set, everything made sense. All the skills I had acquired, all my life experience, everything I really loved came into play and gave me a place to put all of that. And now I have not stopped directing since that first film. It's just been coming to me. It was like an opening. So I came to it in a kind of a magical way.
Right.
You know, hours and hours and years and years and years of experience informing it. But, you know, yes, there's film school, there are programs for kids. You know, if someone wants to act, I think it's such a beautiful craft and you should absolutely do it. And I think it's wonderful for kids. You know, at Strasberg, they have an incredible kids program that really understands the children's instruments and how they can benefit from that training, whether they go on to act or not. A lot of them do, but even if you don't, it's wonderful. I had a school called Theater School. I was working with 3-year-old kids, you know, all the way up. So it's, you know, any kind of that kind of training that Strasberg gives. And then improv is another really great way to train an actor and see if those 2 ways, you'll find out if you really like it or not.
My son was in 7th or 8th grade, and he wanted to not go to music camp like his other sibling did, because he had gone to many music camps. He goes, I want to do something different. I'm not a musician like Luke is. And they go, well, what do you want to do? He goes, I want to go to Second City. Like, well, we don't live in Chicago. Well, can I live with somebody? Well, how are you going to get to Second City every day? I'll learn to take the train or the bus. And as a little 7th grader, he was getting on the bus, transferring to another bus, getting the L, going to Second City, right? He did it for 2 summers. Now he probably won't be a professional comedian, but I know that was really good for him. I know it, no doubt about it.
And that passion and drive for something creative is so good.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be part of our lives. And you know, we have to reinvite that in as Americans. You know, I think Europe is better at you know, involving arts and philosophy and culture into their day, you know, in general, than Americans are. We're so driven here that sometimes we forget that, you know, we're creative souls and we have to find a way to be creative.
Yeah. Is it a misperception to think that we see a lot of Canadians and Europeans playing English speaking roles in American films, playing American characters? Is that incorrect? It seems to me that you see a lot of Europeans and Canadians playing parts that are with an American accent.
Absolutely. Cameron in I Heard Sarah, he came in and auditioned, and I know acting. You know, I've said to people, that accent's wrong, you need to go back, you know. So he comes in, auditions for me, and we call him back, he auditions again. And I think I'm talking to a New Yorker the whole time. And then
no, you're kidding.
said, you like him? I said, yeah, he's from New Zealand. He has a complete New Zealand accent. And so, yes, I mean, that's a kind of commitment, you know, that great actors make, is to perfect an accent. And frankly, they take their training a little bit more seriously sometimes. And they'll just do that, you know, and most of the industry is here. So yeah, you're going to see British actors and Canadian actors playing American roles. But sometimes very well and believable.
Yeah. Was he also a co-producer on the film, Sarah? Cameron? No. Okay.
No, he just came in as an actor.
Last question I have is, when there's lots of, I know that there's usually many producers in a film. I think you had like 4 or 5 or 6. They do all different things, don't they? Some producers seem to like maybe bring money to a project. Some people bring creativity. How would you define for the audience what producers do? Because we always see producers, but I don't think we're always not sure what they're doing.
Yeah, and there's as many kind of producers as there are anything else. And my favorite kind of producer is a producer that feels like they're giving birth to a project. Like they feel that personally involved in the story. That, you know, they'll do anything to tell that story. They believe in the story. They champion everyone that's telling the story. But there are also producers that really know nothing about the story and they're just investing so that they can get a profit later. You know, there are line producers that just do the budget. There are executive producers that just give money or put their name on something so that it will have more commercial appeal. So there's all different kinds of producers. I mean, I like producers that they feel very passionately involved with the story and they want to help, you know, the vision of telling that story.
Is it always involve cash, or is there sweat equity for producers too? Like they actually help out with the project and it's not money. Is it always money?
No, I mean, producers do all the legwork. An executive producer is just money.
Okay.
You know, but a producer is in there, you know, finding the locations, keeping everything moving, knows every specific of everything on the film, a good producer.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I wasn't sure because you see producers, like sometimes movies, they have producers as characters and they tend to be Joe Fat Cat Money, you know, I want to make a profit, but I had a feeling there was more to it than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and passion, and you have to really believe in the project. That's what I think a good producer is.
So what is next for Kymberly Harris? Do you have any kind of series in mind? Any kind of, what's your next big projects looking like for you?
Well, I'm going to direct Robert Alan Ackerman's The Boy in the Pink Flip-Flops. That is in Italy. We're very excited about that. We're in the casting process for that. I'm going to direct a movie called Tell Me Something Good that is being shopped out to different streamers now. It's a brilliant dark comedy, youth dark comedy. I wrote a film that I'm looking for a producer for. I'm shopping around 2 producers, just at the beginning process of that. It's a feature that I just love. And then, as you mentioned earlier, I'm developing Faith into a series.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And does Faith take place mostly in the treatment facility?
Well, the movie does, but the series takes place there pivotally, and then you go into the individual characters' backstories as well.
Right. I love the use of the puppets, by the way. It's an ongoing joke in our company because we're doing more content now with kids. And I'm always the one who wants to bring in puppets. I'm like, will you cut it out with the puppets? I'm like, no, puppets with kids is awesome. Do you want to see them wake up, have them interact with an inanimate object? You know, I think I might win this one, but we're still fighting about puppets. So I love to see your characters with puppets, like sock puppets. It was great.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Well, thank you for being on my show. You've been a wonderful guest, and I'm so excited. It's neat that I've known you for so long now, and to see that your career is just really blossoming, it seems like. And I'm going to continue to look at you, and I hope you come back on our show sometime, maybe after you get back from Italy. It would be amazing to hear about the Flip Flops movie.
Yeah, I would love to. And this has been such a wonderful discussion. And thank you for paying such close attention to the films and asking such interesting questions. I really appreciate it.
Sophie.